let's just go straight into it. Basically, this is more or less a Q&A session, if you like, but we'd really like to hear your insights, your reflections on your experiences in the, and I should just explain, we call our one-to-one meetings with students iTutes. So when you hear the word iTutes, we're actually talking about one-to-one, 30-minute or sometimes longer individual tutorial. Okay. Now, I did send you some questions earlier in the week just to kind of get things going. So what I'm thinking of doing is just asking the first question, get some responses, and if you've got any questions that you want to throw in, etc., please do, and then we'll move on as we need to. Is that okay? Is that clear to everyone? All right. So I suppose the first question, basic one. You're all from different fields and different stages on the academic escalator, if you like. You know, Francis, you've finished your masters. Claire, your international relations masters. Angelique, about to start honours. Is that right? And Tamara, third year arts.
Yeah.
So we've got a nice spread there. What was your initial, and if we start with Tam, what was your initial impetus for coming to see us? What, you know, were you struggling, or were you referred to us?
I heard a lot about the iTutes and how they could be useful, but I never really properly looked into it. And then as I went through uni, I was going to myself, oh, I know that I'm doing some things right, but I don't know how to take it to the next level. So I came across a flyer or something, and I was like, oh, I really should just do this. And yeah, that's how I met Simon.
Moving swiftly on. Thanks, Dan. How about Angelique? What was your impetus? Because we met about 6 or 7 months ago, didn't we?
Yes, I first heard about academic skills through a lecture. My capstone sustainable development had a session, and that was the first time I heard about it, but I guess my first visit was due to undertaking an assignment that was quite new to me and the task, and I just wanted clarification on the expectations of the task. So it was a big report, and I'd never done a report of that scale before.
So just to clarify then, so Tam, yours was you were doing okay with your grades?
Yes.
Getting middling grades, was it, or something?
Yeah.
And you're thinking, how can I kind of move up? You had a specific assignment type of question. Okay, so that's very different. Francis, how about yourself?
We heard it at class as well through some course nights, and my background was in pharmacy, so I hadn't really been used to the essay style writing that we've been doing, so thought I might as well get some professional help for free. So,
So very kind of focused on how do I actually write a report, do lots of reports or essays. Yeah. Right. And Claire, how about yourself?
What happened with me was I had a very nice lecturer who I think recognised that my writing skills weren't that good, and he actually asked to see me in class and recommend that I come and see academic skills. Just to give you a bit of background, I actually did a Bachelor of Science instead of a Bachelor of Arts, and I think that's part of the reason that I missed out on a lot of that basic academic writing that I would have learned with the Bachelor of Arts. And I think he understood that and recognised that I had the ability to understand what's going on, but I just did not have that background learning to actually get them down on paper. And he was very nice about it and very encouraging, and I came along with academic skills and I thought, oh my goodness me, this is a great service. I was very pleased the first time I came along, found out a bit more about it, and then realised that I was lacking a lot of the basic writing skills. And I've actually been to see different academic skills tutors on several occasions since.
So can anybody refer themselves to academic skills here? You don't have to be referred by somebody else.
It's an interesting point, I think. I don't know, I have been talking to a few people recently about how it works, and like everyone has their own way. Like at some universities like Melbourne, everyone can self-refer. Other universities, you have to be referred by someone, or in some universities you have to go to a workshop first before you can actually go to an individual consultation. At some you have to go to like a peer session first, like with another student, before you can be referred on to sort of a professional staff member. So there's a lots of different models. I'm hoping we can keep the open model in Melbourne, because I think, I think, you're a good example of like thinking, okay, I can do with a bit of support, and I have a question here, and I just, see what it's like and whether there's something in it for me. So,
If I can, I'll come back to that. What I think was interesting, and something that kind of ties back to what Hero was, and Caitlin were doing, was that I think Francis and Claire were coming from non-arts backgrounds. Not that yours is arts, Francis, but you were being asked to write in genres that were new to you, different new styles of writing, which is also something that we need to think about, that people don't necessarily go straight through arts and stay in arts, that there's that chopping and changing. Yvette, one more question and then we'll move on, if that's okay.
I had quite a different question. Mine was about, so you were talking about the first time you came into contact with academic skills. Was it what you expected? In terms of what you were going to this service and thinking, okay, it's going to help me, but was it different to what you expected, or similar to what you expected, or?
There was a lot more scope to it than I originally thought there would be. So I discovered you could go and you could do a planning session with the academic skills unit, and I didn't know you could do that. So I just thought it was something where you take a draft along and get some feedback, talk through your arguments.
I was actually surprised by that as well. Sometimes I turned up and I thought I hadn't done as much preparation as I should have, but it was quite handy to get It's sometimes quite handy to get that planning early on, especially when I hadn't been used to that style of writing. It would take me a long time to fix it up if I come on it finished.
it's an interesting misconception, I think, we're trying to grab with. Like, sometimes we see students cancelling their appointments, and some students cancel and rebook for the next day and cancel again and again and again. And you wonder what's going on. We contact them and say, like, oh yeah, I wasn't ready. Like, I hadn't written enough. And it's like, that's fine.
I'm
You don't
a
need to have
serial
anything.
canceller.
Yeah. You're the one.
I feel like I need to come in with a substantial sort of, I've done something and I want to show you something material that I've done.
Before we move on, we just want to make sure we capture all these great insights. So maybe Francis, if you hold that and just rotate the mic along as people speak. Any more questions, or can we move to another area? We okay? Here's a good one for you. I think it's good. I wrote it. Do you think that going to the iTunes, have they helped you become more independent or dependent on the service?
I'll go. I don't think it really affected my dependence at all, but I think it will definitely, the skills that I've learnt from it will be useful for my career if I'm writing reports and things like that. And that's actually another point. I wasn't sure when you were saying some people have to be referred. Is that usually to do with low marks, or has any effect with their grades? Because I think it would be a shame if people who were getting quite good grades weren't able to get the benefits.
If you have to be referred, then lecturers tend to ration it to the students that they think most need it.
And it changes the perception of what we can do.
Yeah.
Having said that, we're going to hear from Carolyn Corson later today. She's a lecturer of general education. She habitually refers people to me who are high achievers, and she wants to push them up higher because she thinks they're worthy of further higher level study. So it's a different side of that coin.
But it's something we're struggling with. Like, a lot of academics have this perception that we do just this remedial work.
Yes.
And I wonder if it's a student perception as well.
And sometimes I think it is a student perception. And I had students telling me sort of like, don't tell me I have to go to academic skills, because it's like, that's why you send, someone literally said, that's why you send the dummies.
Well, that's clearly not true. Angelique, Claire, you've got your hand up, and then we'll come to Angelique. So did it make you more dependent and you felt like you had to go every time, or were you able to actually start stepping back?
I'm actually going to answer two questions, if that's all right, Simon. Just to respond to, sorry, what was your name? Gita. Just to respond to you, when I first started, I was passing, but then thanks to academic skills, my marks have really gone up. A huge difference. I've even got first class honours on a couple of assignments, which is just absolutely wonderful for me. And I'd just like to thank academic skills because they've brought me up to that level. But it wasn't from a lack of knowledge or understanding or intelligence. It was just purely that I did not understand the basic concepts of the structure of how I should write and even the basics of how to do an introductory paragraph, and I've been brought up to that level, which has been really good. To answer the question of being independent or dependent, it has made me more independent because, as you can probably see, I've got a whole stack of notes from, you know, the individual pieces of paper I've been given to some of the group tutorials I've been to, as well as the individual tutorials. And when I do assignments now, I try and use all that information I've learnt, which has made me more independent, and the quality is a much higher quality. So I definitely wouldn't say I've become dependent, but I do come now because I want to reach that higher level. I'd, you know, much rather get the higher marks than sit where I was when I first started my degree.
I see the meetings as a way of accessing resources that, because I often just, I'm Googling how to write this sort of essay or what's expected of a literature review, and I find that my iTunes aren't necessarily about telling me how to approach it, but giving or letting students know there are some tools that you can use to apply to this task. Because for me, I feel like I'm paralysed with fear of getting anything less than a H1, and so it's quite debilitating because you feel like you can't. It's an anxiety. Yeah.
Any questions or comments for the panels?
That's such a powerful thing to say, because we I think are always so focused on the other end of the spectrum about students so anxious about passing that we sometimes forget there's a equally as important side of the continuum which says I want to get high marks and I want to maintain them. I think it's worth being reminded of.
Stephen, can I just ask about your peers' perception of academic skills? Like, would you go to a friend in your classes and say, hey, I've just been to academic skills, it's a wonderful service, you know, you should use it, or do you tend to keep it quiet? What do you do in that situation? Would you share or not share?
So I often share it with my friends, but I think that's because I have friends who are less motivated, and I'm at Ormond College, so like there's a lot of support, of course, academically, and I notice that a lot of them don't take that support, so I'm always trying to encourage them to get more involved with that, just because, you know, they get so anxious and sad, and I'm like, there's a way to get through this. Like, I found this helped me a lot. So yeah, I guess I just try to get other people to do it as well.
A couple of other people in my course have been using it as well, and I think once they've had their first one, they're more likely to go back because they feel like they don't have time. They're trying to finish their essay and do full-time or part-time work, but they don't see how much time it can save them in the long run from having these skills early on. But it has been promoted strongly in our course, so I think that's got the word around.
Through my peers at Melbourne, there is a very strong conception that it's a service that's remedial, and that that there's nothing that academic skills that they can't offer anything in particular. And so I've tried very hard to break that perception, but I feel as if they don't actually go to that first session, they're not going to believe me, basically.
Good question. How do you think we might be able to address that belief that we are remedial rather than developmental? Or where does it come from? Why do they think it's remedial? Two questions.
I think perhaps it's through the material online. There is no, I can't even think of what it looks like now, but there isn't a sense that it's about development.
Okay, good to know.
So I don't get that from the information that I've looked at.
Well, if we don't get anything else today, that's all. Seriously, you know, if that's not coming through in our website and our homepage, then we need to look at that. Any other questions or comments on this particular topic? perception why it's...
Just on that perception thing, someone talked about, one of you said that they don't know until you first come, or you first come and change your mind. I hear that all the time. When students leaving saying, this is nothing like what I thought it was going to be. In a positive way. So maybe it's getting people in the door.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
I was just going to say, I think, just from my perspective, this is not peculiar to academic skills, this particular dynamics. I just kind of would note that with the number of the services that we offer, it's often really hard to persuade students to go in the door, and once they get in the door, they then realise what it can do for them, and maybe tell their friends, maybe not. And that really is a very common story. So there's something about our own self-efficacy around wanting to ask for help and how that feels, and that speaks about people's own, where they are in terms of their own confidence and security and all those things. So, you know, we can really understand that. And that's why we have programs like Student Connect, trying to really, you know, get in with students as they commence and talk to them about how they might think about that more, you know, more actively. So, anyway.
Sorry. I just want to add to the thing about the website. I think in first year also it gets marketed a lot as, oh, if you don't know how to write, go here. So students just get that perception that it's not to really help them develop at any level.
And yeah, we're fighting a lot with the academics to try to change it. And you know, we've got slogans now like "Go for Excellence" and things like that. But it is really hard. But it's very interesting. We have last year started to run a drop-in survey with PhD students seeing undergraduate students, and we get a very different cohort there. And actually, Chrissy and Mark, I don't know if you want to say about it, but I think we've seen that a lot of students who go to see the slightly older peer go there because they want to improve their marks rather than feeling they're having problems or struggling or whatever. And we get a lot of the students who have never been to an ITUT and might never go to an ITUT. They just go there and think, if I talk to a PhD student, they might help me to get better marks, but if I go to an academic skills advisor, that's for the people who are struggling. So it's a very interesting dynamic there.
Sorry.
Yeah. Well, it might have something to do with the fact that drop-ins, you don't have to make an appointment. And with, I suppose when you make an appointment, you're admitting to yourself you need to talk to, it's like a counsellor or something, you know, it's a different thing to admit to yourself rather than, oh, I'm here, why don't I just drop by? And also if you don't, and also if you don't feel like you need it up until the last minute, you don't have to come.
Can I just turn it back, focus back to the panellists? And we've got, how long have we got left there, Aaron? About 5 minutes?
Yes. No, longer actually.
Oh, more, okay, great. From your experiences with the iTunes, what do you think, what are some ways we could improve the service? Either in terms of the booking, which I think is a significant step that you have to take and then put people off, or from what happens within it, or time, any aspect.
Yeah. Simon, I'd like you to go back to 1 hour instead of half an hour. Not anymore. I felt that during the 1 hour session a lot more could be covered, especially if I was doing a 2,000, 3,000 or even, heaven forbid, a 5,000 word essay. Whereas during the half an hour session that's still good, but I feel that the time is very rushed and there's not enough time to actually look at the whole, for example, 2,000 word assignment. And I really got a lot of benefit out of the 1 hour or 50-minute sessions. And I'd really like you guys to go back to that, please.
So just for our visitors, we used to do, usually the standard session was 1 hour, and we have basically cut them back to 30 minutes. We have lost staff or other reasons.
You only have 4 a semester, is that right?
4 appointments.
Maximum.
And if you cancel, technically that
Cancel
counts
doesn't
as one?
count, but fail to attend.
On the website.
It counts to it.
That's,
And we always happy to increase that limit if we think students would really benefit from it. The main thing is just for equity reasons, because we have some students who would like to come every day. And it's a dependency issues too. Often with ESL students, they just want to get feedback on everything they write on every page. And it's just a way of managing that, basically. But if we feel a student would really benefit from another session, we're happy to increase that limit. But yeah, usually we restrict it to that because, like I said, it's an equity issue too, because we have students sometimes who are trying to book out everything, and other students don't get in.
Do you still do the groups of 3 or 4 if they're working on a similar task?
Yes, we do that, but it's a bit harder for us to organise that. So they can do that, but basically they have to organise that amongst themselves.
So, anybody, sorry, I'll come back to you in a moment. So can Claire, Angeliki or Francis, Tam, in terms of improvements or changes?
It would be good to have a sense of what we're going to cover in the iTunes. Each time I've gone in with a question or an assignment, I've received a different kind of, not advice, but we've covered something different, which has been productive. But I wasn't really. I guess if I was to book an appointment tomorrow, I don't really know what to expect. So perhaps towards the beginning of the session, there might be a discussion of what we're going to do today. Just because we run out of time.
What are we going to do in terms of what you want to do?
I often have 1,000,001 questions that can't be covered in half an hour, so I don't. Yes, uncertain. I don't know.
So really, you're talking about kind of negotiating what's going to happen in the session, what you want. Because I know from our perspective, what you want might not actually be the most pressing problem.
Yes.
As soon as we start looking at the paper, etc. But it's an important thing that you need to feel, or the students need to feel that they're actually being helped with what they want help with, if you like. So that's good too. It's good to be aware of that. Francis, have it yourself.
I think time is the main issue with me. Luckily, we've often had a blank appointment afternoon, so that's helped out. But I think even like 45 minutes would probably be a bit better than half an hour if it could be managed. But, yeah.
When we did have half-hour sessions, did you feel that was really inadequate, or?
I think it was definitely still helpful, but I think another 15 minutes would have added a lot to it, especially at sometimes when I had, say, 3 essays at the same time.
And why was that? Sorry. Tam, by itself as the kind of as someone who's still an undergraduate and doing kind of smaller assignments, generally speaking, than the other 3 people.
Yeah, so far I've found that half an hour is fine if you've got generally, a 1,500 or 2,000 word essay. I guess just in terms of essay support, like in literature, I know they have quite different ways of applying sources within the essay. So, kind of having some of that more specific advice can be useful when doing an essay.
Sorry, let's hear from Angelique, then we'll go to Ariana.
I've got a comment to build on that. I feel as if sometimes in the meetings, the material that I'm discussing in my paper is somewhat foreign to the academic skills advisor, which is both a positive and a negative because you have to ensure that your message is clear because, anyone should be able to understand it. But then when there are a set of assumptions in each discipline and sometimes you're spending a lot of time trying to map it out, and I guess that's one of the challenges.
Thank you. Ariana.
It's great to hear that you all feel that by coming to our individual tutorials that you haven't become dependent on us and instead you actually feel more independent because you've built up some skills that you can take away and apply yourself in your current assignment and your future assignments, which is wonderful. That's what we're hoping to do. And a lot of our discussions have been around building students' independence. And in addition to individual tutorials, for like the institutions that are here today, we also offer other services like our flyers and our workshops as well, so that students can pick up information and ideas and skills in other areas. Is that something that you have any thoughts or comments on or experiences with?
Yes, I've got a whole book here. As I said before, I've got the flyers and I've got the PowerPoint presentations from the workshops, and I found them very useful as well. As I said earlier, you know, I've come from a different discipline where the writing was completely different. Scientific writing is extremely different from, you know, writing in international relations. And I've just found the whole service to be extremely useful, and I'm just so glad that you do offer that service. I think the individual tutorials have really helped me specifically with individual assignments, but overall the workshops have helped me with studying for exams, for example, and then even doing some of the oral type assignments in class. So overall they've all been very good and helpful, so thank you.
I'm wondering if you've got any suggestions as to how we can get more students to attend those workshops. You've gained a lot from it, but there's lots of students out there who don't wish to attend an extra workshop because it's an extra hour out of their life and they might not get something out of it. I'm just wondering in the panel, how do you think that could help? Do you think it should be tied in with lectures or subjects, or how could we improve the participation in those sorts of workshops?
As I mentioned earlier, it was a lecturer who recommended it to me, and I've done a lot of subjects over the years. There's been very few lecturers who have actually mentioned it to their students. Maybe 3 or 4 classes that I've been through have only mentioned it. So maybe, yeah, just some education sent to the academic staff might help, especially I think with students who are coming on board first year, maybe even during orientation week as well, maybe if there were more flyers being handed around. And I think also other people have mentioned that there is the overall perception that it's only for students who are struggling, whereas I admit that I was in that category when I first started, but now I'm trying to achieve the top marks, so I'm no longer in that category. But I think maybe to overcome that perception, just to advertise your service in such a way that you're trying to improve the excellence or standard of students, not just the ones who are struggling. That might actually get more students coming through.
Thanks for that, Claire. Sorry, go ahead, Francis, and I'll come to you.
We had some core subjects, and for one of those we had a session run straight after it finished, and a lot of people stayed on for that. I think that's probably quite a good way. It just makes it as easy as possible for people to stay. Yeah, it had quite good turnout. I think you actually ran it. Is it Eva? Or? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Eva, sorry.
It's not me.
Yeah, okay. What you
Masters of Public Health. You did some research.
Yes, that was the
skills.
research assignment.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. We ran it in the lecture.
Yeah. Yeah, one of them was, and there was another one afterwards as well.
Yeah.
Which is, yeah.
So those kind of very focused, targeted, captive audiences. Yeah. I don't think I'm sorry.
Yeah. I was interested in what you said about having to explain the assumptions of your discipline to the skills advisor, because it's very important that they understand why you're being asked to do what you're being asked to do. So does this mean that you might see an advisor whose discipline expertise is something very different, or do you get, do the advisors specialise in clusters of disciplines and students from those get to see them?
They're quite broad. So when you have a look at the bio of the advisor, it's either science or arts, and they're so varied. And so some the geographies, I mean, every discipline is specific, but there are a lot of concepts in geography that are complex, and it takes a while to get your head around them. And it would be great to know who you're going to speak to, because sometimes if the reason that I'm going to speak to an advisor is more about the language and structure, it doesn't bother me who I speak to.
Any other questions or comments? I actually had a question, related to that, written down here about, did you ever feel that the advisor just didn't know enough about your subject, content area, I mean, and was that a problem? Did that have an impact on the value of the feedback? You can say no.
I guess with literature, I found it fine a lot of the time because people would be familiar with the books anyway, since they're a lot of the time canon books. And with history also, it's very simple to just give a couple of the key dates and make it clear why it's important, so it didn't matter too much to me.
I never had a problem with it either, but I suppose the audiences that I'll be writing in the future for with Masters of Public Health, it's quite important to be able to write for anyone, to be able to pick up your documents and have a read, especially if it's like an executive summary or something like that, and you want to maximise the number of people who are going to get through it. It's good to make it pretty obvious.
I think coming into honours, I imagine discipline is going to be an issue as far as the sort of meetings that I'll be seeking with the academic skills. I have had a couple of assignments where I was looking for sort of advice from someone who had insight into the content, and even though I wasn't able to receive that, there were other benefits, substantial benefits to the meeting. So I suppose content is more, I assume that's something you speak to your tutor about as opposed to the skills.
Just on that point, why wouldn't you go to your tutor or your professor if you've got a question about content?
I would normally, but most other students wouldn't, because there's a perception that they're not all of the time, but there's a very common perception that lecturers just don't have time for you, and a lot of them don't. And tutors take I would imagine for first years it would be a little bit difficult to speak to a tutor. Yeah.
Final comment to Claire.
Sorry, I just want to add on that as well. I have actually felt intimidated by the odd lecturer who's completely embarrassed me in front of the whole class over what I thought was a reasonably intelligent question, to the point that I just don't feel comfortable asking questions, or I feel embarrassed, or I don't want to be perceived as being stupid, and I just feel more comfortable asking questions like that when I come to the iTunes. And I guess my major issue is not so much the research or the understanding or the knowledge of what my essay is about. It's more how to put that down on paper, how to actually write that in a structural way, and that's where the academic skills has really helped me. So I guess, and also to answer your earlier question, the fact that some of my tutors don't have some of the international relations knowledge is not a major issue for me, because I've done all that. I've done the research. I already know, and I'm happy to explain to them what it is I'm trying to write about. My purpose for being there is actually structurally writing it, and that's where I struggle, and that's where my tutors have really helped me.
Well, thank you very much. I'd just like to say we really appreciate you coming here today. I mean, it's something we'd love to do more often, but we don't always get the opportunity, so it's really priceless to hear these insights, and we've heard so many things already, I think, from this, which is great. So thanks very much, and please give them a warm round of applause.